Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Block. I come from the University of Rochester, and I'm really excited to present to you today about equipping faculty and staff with knowledge and tools to support the mental health of students. So as I just mentioned, my name is Rebecca Block. I go by she, her, hers. I am the health educator at the Health Promotion Office at the University of Rochester. I direct the Mindful University Project, which is a large initiative that is at the University of Rochester to create a culture of mindfulness. And we not only provide students, faculty, and staff with mindfulness programming, but we also work to equip faculty and staff with ways to be mindful with students, take care of their own well-being, and also we work to make policy changes here. And just a little bit more about me and my background. So I have a Master's of Science in Community Health Education. I actually received that in May of 2020 from Teachers College at Columbia University, and I am a certified health education specialist. I am a registered yoga teacher, and I also am a certified Koru mindfulness teacher. And so Koru Mindfulness is a 4-week evidence-based learn to meditate class for college populations. So that's just a little bit more about what Koru is. So I do want to let you know that today we will be talking about some difficult topics, specifically trauma, mental distress, and suicide that exists with college students. And while we're going to be going through each slide, I encourage you to assess your comfort level and also your own personal safety and emotions. So you're welcome to pause this. It is offered asynchronously, so you can pause this. You can always take a break whenever you need. And whenever you are distressed, you can also use this grounding practice if you do need to take a break. And so this is a really helpful practice to help you reorient your brainstem to tell you that you are safe. So this is something that you can always give to students before class where you be talking about some difficult topics, or if you notice if a student is dysregulated or needs to calm down. So you can use this and you can go through the practice of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, identifying 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and then 1 thing you can taste. So before we begin, I just want to invite you all to join in a brief centering practice. And so this is something that I'm sure you all are well versed in, just taking a moment of pause before teaching students during a class, or maybe even before a meeting. And so my words are just invitations. So I invite you to go through this guided meditation or do whatever you need to help you be most present. So find a comfortable seated position. Begin to bring awareness to your feet, firmly planted onto the ground beneath you. Feeling your sitting bones supported by the chair. And begin to roll your shoulders up, back, and down. And just begin to bring awareness to your breath. Noticing the natural cadence of your breath. Noticing each in-breath expanding the belly, filling up the lungs. Each out-breath, just letting everything settle. And just simply notice your breath with compassion, with how it's showing up, whatever time or day you are watching this. You may have done a lot before you watched this, or maybe the end of the day or beginning of the day. Just being compassionate to whatever your body is telling you right now. And so throughout our days, we often focus on if our laptop and phone batteries are charged. And so now I encourage you to think of your own internal battery, checking in with yourself. So you can think of your own energy in the same way, even throughout the course of the day, just having brief check-ins with yourself. And I invite you to think right now, what is your internal battery at? Maybe you place a percentage to it. Without judgment, just calling it into your mind. And now just think of things, maybe just one small thing that helps you to recharge, usually when you're feeling kind of tired or exhausted. Once you have that one small activity that helps replenish your batteries, now think of today, what you have later, and maybe where you could mentally put this in your calendar. I love the meditation app named Shine. They like to call this future you care. So think of where you can infuse this recharging activity into your day or maybe your week ahead. Once you have that mentally scheduled in your calendar, you can set that aside and then begin to slowly move the fingers and the toes. Slowly open up your eyes. So during today's workshop, I'll be talking about a lot of things. And in order to establish the practice of equipping faculty and staff with this workshop series, we'll have to talk about the need regarding college student mental health, stress and burnout on well-being and work, and also supporting students during COVID-19, specifically their mental health. I'll talk more about the workshop series that we have led ever since last June of last year of 2021, and also how. So how can you bring this into your institution, your college, maybe even a K through 12 setting? How will you be able to implement it, evaluate it, promote it? I'll be going through all the different best practices that you could use so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And unfortunately, since we're not in person, we can't do the activity, but you can just have some time to brainstorm how you can bring this workshop series to your institution. So why this workshop series was created and why it is really important to equip faculty and staff with knowledge of how to support student mental health is that students during their college years are very pivotal for their mental health. So they're in that really formative time where before the age of 25, that's where a lot of mental health illnesses emerge. So it's really important for us to come in with a preventative lens, making sure that they're supported in a variety of different ways. And so student mental health is a growing issue and concern on mental health campuses. And specifically during COVID, it's increased. So worry and fear about their own health and their loved ones' health exists. They could be, sleep disruptions, increase in social isolation and loneliness, difficulty with concentration, and even concerns about a decrease in academic performance. And what's important to know is that approximately 2 in 3 undergrad students have experienced trauma. So this is really important. And so trauma could be big T traumas where students were in Colorado at the time of those fires and maybe even Texas last spring. Or they could be little T traumas just building up over time. So all those little small stressors that in combination with everything else just are a trauma itself. And in a Chronicle of Higher Education survey conducted in 2017, college leaders and presidents stated that student mental health was their #1 concern. And for those of you who are at universities and their leadership didn't have buy-in to mental health then, it seems like a lot of campuses now and leaders at different colleges are tapping into this and realizing how important this is. As I mentioned earlier, the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated underlying mental health issues and concerns amongst students in higher education, but also there's a lot of other things going on. So students' normal day-to-day finances may have been impacted, their families may be sick, or they may experience grief or loss. And there's a lot of other things going into it. And so another reason to bring these workshop series to faculty and staff is that their stress and burnout impacts students. So more about stress and burnout with faculty and staff are that job demands have increased over the past 2 decades. And also oftentimes, especially during this pandemic, a lot of colleges are understaffed. So therefore, it's unfortunate that there are also inadequate supports. And if work demands and stress are unable to be managed, we know that it can lead to burnout. And Maslach and Jackson define burnout as relating to a feeling of weariness, disinterest, and reduced performance. And so one of the biggest symptoms of burnout that we need to keep note of is that it impacts our ability to personalize with others, which this is really important for us when we're supporting students and engaging with them, teaching them. This is going to be something that not only impacts us, but it impacts our ability to show up for others, to be empathic and compassionate. So there was a report that came out of the Boston University School of Public Health in collaboration with the Mary Christie Foundation and the Healthy Minds Network last year. And so they reported that the majority of faculty, almost 80% in the last 12 months, stated that they had one-on-one conversations with students regarding their mental health and wellness. Of those, only 51% of respondents stated that they felt equipped to recognize a student in distress. And of those, only 30% stated that they had received trainings on how to support student mental health, while 70% wanted that information. And what's even important to note is that approximately 21% of faculty agreed that supporting students in emotional distress had taken a toll on their own mental health. So this is really important information for us going forward, and it provides such an important need for how we need to support students, not only in their mental health, but we also need to support the faculty and staff when they're supporting students, and also teach them how to support them. So a lot of you know about burnout and stress, anxiety, but compassion fatigue is a kind of new term that has been going around. It's like a buzzword ever since the pandemic, particularly for healthcare providers and also educators. And so compassion fatigue is defined as a form of secondary or vicarious trauma that occurs when exposed to those who are suffering from traumatic events. And it has been described as the cost of caring for others in emotional and physical pain. And so compassion fatigue results in an inability to react sympathetically to a crisis or suffering because of overexposure to these crises. And compassion fatigue and burnout are similar, but they're not the same. So some of the differences is that compassion fatigue has a rapid onset of recovery, whereas burnout occurs over time and is not trauma related. So it's easy for us to bounce back from compassion fatigue, but for burnout, it can take longer. And so some symptoms include nervous system arousal, depression, as well as PTSD, loss of self-worth, hope, and meaning, decrease in cognitive ability, and affected behavior and judgment. And since compassion fatigue affects students, it's really important for us to focus on this, not only because we want to take care of them all the time, but when we take care of them too much, sometimes it can actually hamper our ability to support them. So what do I mean by that? So as you can see on this slide, compassion fatigue is a process. And so on the left, you will see that those who are compassionate and give an empathic response feel that sense of compassion satisfaction. And so that means that you have support, and this person maybe only came to you a couple times and it felt like it was productive and it actually impacted their life. However, over time, if there's a prolonged exposure to suffering, maybe even some traumatic memories, other life demands, and lack of support, it can lead to compassion fatigue. And so compassion fatigue can also lead to detachment. So it can impact one's ability to actually be present with individuals and provide compassionate responses. And so it's really important for us to stay on the left side of the compassion fatigue process and make sure that we don't overextend ourselves and kind of put ourselves in situations where we actually can't make a big change. So why am I talking about all of these? So burnout and compassion fatigue have impacts on your physical, emotional, and mental well-being. So for mental well-being, it can cause depression and anxiety, sleep disruptions, absence, turnover, anger, anxiety, irritability, complaining, and even an inability to focus, as well as physical well-being, which is really important for our mental as well, such as our endocrine functions, metabolism, as well as our immunity. And so all of this information was compiled from a systematic review conducted by Watts and Robertson in 2011. And it not only impacts our own well-being, but it also impacts the way that we show up to work every day, as well as our teaching. So these can hamper development of relationships as well as trust with students. It can impact our ability to provide clear instruction to students, as well as provide a safe and inclusive learning environment. It can negatively impact the emotions and academic achievement of students, specifically because it can impact one's ability to provide academic and social supports for students, as well as unable to meet the needs of diverse student populations. And so there are different ways that one can improve compassion fatigue and burnout, or even prevent it. So there's individual level interventions such as mindful self-care, and this can be a protective factor and is positively associated with quality of life and compassion satisfaction. Interpersonal is those interactions that you have with others. This could include quality supervision with your boss, networks of support at work, or with your peers or community. And then the institutional wide, support through continuing education and knowledge about and access to resources. So all of your different institutions have a variety of different resources. And even if they don't, your community may have a ton of different supports for you as well as your students. So it's important for us all to come into this with a social ecological framework and not only intervene at the individual level, provide those mindfulness sessions, maybe even provide wellness opportunities at work and take more time off, but then also provide more supports in your own department with students, but then also working at the policy level just to create an environment where everybody can be well. So now we'll be talking about equipping faculty and staff with knowledge of how to support student mental health. And so this is a community and institutional wide workshop series that was created. And it was started by me last June of 2021 at the University of Rochester. And so this is just a little bit of information about why I thought this was necessary at the University of Rochester itself. We've learned a lot of information about national data, but here's some of our data from the University of Rochester. So every couple of years, we conduct the American College Health Association's National College Health Assessment. And on the 2020 report, this was actually in February of 2020, so not during the pandemic, or it was right at the onset. So these data weren't too indicative as to student mental health during the pandemic, but it did provide us with a good case as to why this was necessary. So as you can see here, loneliness was really high. So over half of the male and female student population felt loneliness in the past 12 months. Over 25% of our student body had a positive suicidal screening. The stress levels were very high, almost 50% reported moderate and 26% reported high, as well as psychological distress. Over 20% were moderate and 21% were serious. And lastly, hopelessness. 37% reported some, most, or all of the time. So these are unique, but just like any other higher institution setting, our rates just fell a couple percentage points below the national average. So you may find that at your institution, if you do conduct this National College Health Assessment, that you may find really alarming statistics like we did. And so one of the big indicators for us was that the student well-being impacted their academic performance. And so this is really important, not because we're interested in their academic achievement or their retention in school, but we need to support not only students' academics, but also their mental health in order to improve their academic performance in classes. So this just gave us even more of a case to equip faculty and staff with these tools, because they are the ones grading them. They are the ones educating them. So they have a really big impact on students' academics. So as you can see, all of these different things such as stress, anxiety, depression, and sleep difficulties really impacted student academic performance, of which stress and anxiety were the highest, and then third and fourth were depression and sleep difficulties. And another really big reason why we also needed this workshop series is because we are short-staffed, not only due to the pandemic, but also because freshman enrollment over the years has increased. To this past academic year, 2021 to 2022, we onboarded the largest class that we have ever brought at the institution. So now we have a huge freshman body size, we have less staff. We need to make sure that the staff and faculty that we have are being supported, and that when students do come to them in distress, because they are the gatekeepers of student mental health, it's important for us to equip that with that knowledge. So now we're going to go into talking about the beginning of this workshop series, how it has transformed over the past year, and also how you can bring this into your institution. So here's just the front of a flyer that we had. And I think this was also an Instagram post. And so this began in June 2021, and we have offered all of these workshops online via Zoom. And at the beginning, when we had this first workshop series in June, we had over 8 sessions, and we had 166 folks registered and up to 54 participants at each. And since then, we've held other workshops. In total, we've had over 330 participants show up on to Zoom for these workshops. So in June, here are some of the workshops that we offered. So we had sessions on supporting students' mental health during COVID, practicing cultural humility while experiencing compassion fatigue, creating contemplative classrooms, college student mental health, so prevention and early intervention strategies for faculty, self-communication as an act of love and social change, recognizing and supporting students in distress. I led a session on educator self-care and self-compassion. And lastly, we had one on trauma-informed pedagogy, considerations for post-secondary educators. And so, as you can note on all of these individuals came from the University of Rochester, or if not, they came from the Rochester community. So there are different people that you can tap into, not only at your institution, but even in your community, and maybe even tapping into those who may be just national. They could be in different state. That's the beauty of Zoom these days. You can tap into expertise outside of your institution. But if you do want to tap into experts on your own campus, here are some different individuals who you may want to reach out to. So there are health educators sometimes in university health services, maybe in the student affairs department or health promotion offices. You can also tap into psychologists and mental health counselors. Educators are full of expertise, especially since they are the ones who are with students every day. You can reach out to your Title IX office, your student affairs staff, diversity and inclusion offices, offices of minority affairs, international student offices. If your college has wellness opportunities, maybe they also have dance and mindfulness and meditation teachers. Omnibud's office people are also really great, academic and career advisors. If you have a chapel on campus, they are also equipped with a lot of different skills, as well as centers for teaching and learning. And here are a variety of other topics that you may be interested in offering for your campus. So here are some of the ones that we have thought about for including for the future that you may want to bring to yours. So trauma-informed conversations is something that is been increased in prevalence recently. So all of us are so aware of primary and secondary trauma and how our students are impacted during this pandemic. So it's really important for us to be trauma-informed in all of our interactions with our students, and also growing our ability to engage with all of our student groups on campus, and specifically being inclusive to those who identify as LGBTQ+, BIPOC, AIPI, as well as international student mental health. Another topic that you may be interested in is promoting social connection in the classroom, particularly over Zoom, since it's hard for us to sometimes get students engaged over Zoom. It's really important for us to learn how to get students engaged. How can we make Zoom more fun? As well as decreasing mental health stigma in the classroom. So stigma exists on regarding mental health on college campuses and also everywhere else. So how can we break the ice? How can we get our students comfortable to talk about their mental health? And also learning how to integrate movement and mind breaks into the classroom. You may invite in a dance or yoga or mindfulness instructor for this, as well as supporting students experiencing grief and loss. So all of us have gone through grief and loss during this pandemic, whether it's losing family members or loved ones. Maybe it's even just like grieving the loss of what our lives used to be and what it used to be like without having to wear a mask or to be online. Also, things such as mindful listening practices, as well as cultural sensitivity. And so here are just some ways that you could promote this workshop series. So what we did is we got buy-in from our leadership and deans. So my boss actually sits on the Coalition for Student Mental Health and Wellness. Our president actually also sits on that. So the leaders knew about this workshop series as well as deans. So they really helped to promote to faculty and staff that they engage with. And we also send out information to different departments. Different departments have their own newsletters to send out to their colleagues. And we also came into different departmental meetings to talk about it. So you can always speak with individuals and ask to just provide like 2 to 5 minutes of their time during their meeting just to talk about this workshop series and have them sign up. And what could be really great to engage faculty and staff is also to encourage supervisors to share and make it mandatory. So allowing for colleagues to do this during protected time, during their work hours, instead of off hours could be really great. You can also provide giveaways and also continuing education credits if you do want to go through that process of getting CEs approved. So for those of you on college campuses, you may know that engaging with faculty can be difficult. So they have a lot on their plate and it can be hard for them to find time for these things. And they may also feel like they don't want to be a therapist, but there are many different ways to support students without being a therapist. And so educating and supporting them on these topics, how to support student mental health in tactile and easy ways is a great way to encourage them to attend. So what we did is that we surveyed faculty and staff to understand their interest and availability. So we sent out a survey to get buy-in, to understand what topics they wanted, what time they would even attend. So really just understanding what they want, when they want it, and getting that early buy-in is important. You can also promote it in faculty newsletters. This could be done by reaching out to deans and leaders. And also have these workshops be a part of faculty meetings, maybe even a part of faculty development workshop series. So at our campus, we have future faculty workshop series. We have other workshops that go on for faculty and staff. So maybe you could even get some of these workshops as a part of that to help collaborate and to cross promote. And so after you do all of this, it's really important to evaluate the efficacy of the workshop series, not only understanding overall satisfaction, quality of workshops, but also to evaluate learning and outcome objectives. So at the end of a workshop, if people can identify 2 things that they learned, maybe 3 skills that they have, really being smart about your objectives and making sure that the workshop clearly meets the evaluation and that people are able to describe what they learned from the workshop. This is really helpful to get leaders to buy in if you do want to make this a larger endeavor, but also just for your own information to look at the efficacy of these workshops and also improve. And what we also like to include is, as a result of the workshops, they have the opportunity to describe the changes that they intend to make, how they will implement those changes, and what barriers exist from them to implement these changes. So this helps us to understand if they're going into the pre-contemplation to contemplation to action stage, and also if there's any way that we can help better support them. And also we like to know about future improvements. So doing formative evaluation. So asking them what topics and skills they would like to learn more about, any suggestions that they have, as well as what areas of their teaching or interactions with students do they feel less prepared or more uncomfortable regarding student mental health. And so we can conduct these evaluations on Qualtrics. You can also use it on other survey platforms such as SurveyMonkey or Google Forms. And just to show you a little bit about some of the anecdotes that we received from our workshop series, here are some that we thought were really notable. So one person said, "This is a timely gift to help me be a better instructor and advisor. Thank you so very much." Another wrote, "Quite personalized and stimulated active discussions." Third was, "It was the perfect amount of time and number of sessions that it was not overwhelming, but still informative." Another said, "Timely and practical." And the last one was, "There was a lot of helpful content, data, research provided that offered better context for why students experience crises in different ways. And both sessions offered practical advice that I can directly incorporate into my teaching." So as you go about leading these workshop series and evaluating them, you'll most likely get a lot of these same praises. And since our June evaluations, we have led many other workshops. So we just have a running list of praise of all the different ways that our faculty and staff benefited from these workshops, but also personal anecdotes as to how this has directly impacted their teaching and supporting their students. And so here's just another thing that I thought would be helpful for you all to know about, is that in conjunction with the workshop series, we provided all of our faculty and staff with this brief little card that helps them to help a student in distress. So this is a small card that we printed out for everyone, and it just goes over different concerns for our students, symptoms of distressed or distressing students that faculty and staff can just have in the back of their mind. And then on the back, we also had a brief list of different ways that you can respond to distressed students or distressing students. And also a lot of different places on campus at the University of Rochester that can not only support faculty and staff, but also students who may be in distress. So this is just an example of a tangible that you may want to offer your faculty and staff after a workshop series in order to better support them and for them to have a little handy flyer for them to look at. So we would go through the activity if we had this in person, but I'd just like you to think about your institution. What data that you have seen with your student body and their mental health, and also different data sources that you could tap into. So maybe you want to do some research, maybe you want to tap into different departments, see if they've done any surveys. And also thinking about what expertise on campus you will tap into, thinking of all the different departments and all the individuals who have a wealth of knowledge that could contribute to the workshop series, as well as what topics you may want to bring. So the data can really help drive and inform what topics you could bring. But as you meet with people on campus, they may even have some ideas as to what would be helpful for faculty and staff to support the student mental health. So thank you so much for your time. If you are interested in learning more about the research that went into this presentation, here is the reference list, and I will be including that with this video. And if you do want to reach out to me, you can reach out to my email. It is rblock@uhs.rochester.edu, and I can also include that as well. I'd love to chat with any of you who are interested in doing work like this, or if you just have any questions, I am happy to schedule a time to meet. So thank you so much for your time. I hope you all continue to have a great conference and be well.